Hi there, this is Helen Tarrant again from Melbourne. Here with our whole team. Wow, it's massive. Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and today I'm actually going to show you property comparisons in metro areas, right? So property comparisons. So right now in this current market, if you are comparing metro properties, you've got to compare yield with yield, but also you've got to compare capital, you've got to get capital growth in the back end as well. So what does that mean? It means that if you're comparing Toowoomba property against Brisbane property, against Sydney property, against Melbourne property, you've got to make sure that those properties are actually delivering for you the capital growth you've got in the back end. Because if you're getting into a deal at 5% or shy of 5% or between 5.5%, then you should be looking at what kind of potential capital growth you're going to have in the back end, right? Because that's going to be important going forward so that you can buy again and continue to grow. If you're doing regional, that's a different story, and I can do another part just about that. But today, I'm going to cover off a few of these properties for you so you get to see it. So number one, I'm going to show you right now the Toowoomba property. So the Toowoomba property is a government tenant, right? Government tenant, 70-year lease, 300 or so square meters, 5% yield, right? And then 5 2-year options. Very, very odd, right? So they're probably giving them a massive incentive for them to come into the property. Good time to sell, but 5% yield is getting a bit ridiculous for Toowoomba. So that is, would you buy 5% in Toowoomba with a government tenant? Very, very secure government tenant. Toowoomba Regional Council probably never really moves out, but you're going to have rotational lease after 7 years. Let me know. Put a comment down below. Next one I want to show you is actually this property in Toowoomba. So Toowoomba is Brisbane. This is a gentrified area. It's got a law firm to it. So this is a number 24, 25 Toowoomba. So 5.27% yield, about 1.3 million. So comparable to the one in Toowoomba, but it is a different type of tenant. It's a law firm, so it's still very, very secure. It's got a 5-year lease, not a 7-year lease to start with, but still 5 years is pretty good. And also you've got, the longevity, and the area is gentrified. Yes, the property itself is half the space, so it's not about 300 or so square meters. It is a property that is about 170 or so square meters. So would you prefer to buy that? I mean, obviously rents is higher in Brisbane in comparison, so would you do that versus a slightly larger tenancy in Toowoomba? And so then moving on from that, you've got a Sydney property here in Gordon, which is a gentrified area in a building where it's full of allied health, medical type tenant, in a well-to-do area, and you've got a dentist that's got 4 more years to go on the lease. They've probably been there for a couple of terms, and that's also selling at a 5% yield. So same rents, about 170 or so square meters, same $70,000 or so rent, about $1.5 million, right? Would you buy a 5% dental clinic in Sydney compared to all office spaces? Remember that office space, a dental clinic in an office space, a law firm in an office space. You've got Toowoomba, who is in a office space as well, regional council in an office space, right? Which one of these at 5% would you buy, right? Make a comment below, let me know, right? Now, moving on from there, in comparison, there is Kent Town. Kent Town's in South Australia, it's in SA. Now, this property is a little bit cheaper, so it's about 600 grand or so. It's going to be about 6% or just shy of 6% yield on this property, but you're going to save on stamp duty. You've got 3-year lease over a 5-year lease, but the tenant's been there for a long time and they're real estate agents in that local area. So would you consider that as slightly, shorter lease, but higher yield? Would you do that, right? So you've got to compare, think about these things, because for everything that goes from a 3 to a 5, you take a hit on the yield, on your return, right? So if it's a 6%, then by the time you get to a 5-year lease, is now a 5% or 5.5% yielding property. And again, so would you do that? What would you choose? Would you choose the 3 years but higher yield? Again, depending on whether you're risk averse or not. If you're not risk averse, then you would want to, if you're not risk averse and you're willing to take some risks, then you probably choose the higher yield over something that is of a lower yield in a more metro area. But when you're comparing metro to metro, Toowoomba at 5% is really crazy, right, to pay. But someone will pay that because someone is going to give them the advice that, you know, they wouldn't get 7 years in Sydney or Melbourne on, you know, anything more than 5%, which I know as a buyer's agent myself, that's absolute rubbish. You can get that every day of the week. If you want a 5% yielding property, we can find you one in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane every day of the week. You know, it doesn't have to be a 7% yield. We can find you something just as good, right? So I would be paying that. But, you know, it doesn't mean that you won't, right? Everyone's got a different value system, which is why we're having this video. The other thing is also, I'm going to share with you, you know, if you look at this Kent Town property, you get to see that it's an office space. It's an office space. It has 4 car spaces, just like the Sydney one, just like the 2-1 property. They're all this very similar. You know, if it was you, what would you choose? And if you're our client, we have to assess these kind of deals to look at what's the ultimate outcome for you that is going to be better. And we then decide which property to present to you. So there's a lot that goes on in the background as well when you assess deals, right? Especially when you're assessing deals, when you're just looking at yields, you have to look at historic capital growth. And that's what happens right now in this market if you want to buy in a metro area. So moving on from there, here's a property from Melbourne. So Melbourne Gyro Clinic, a perfect practice, right? The EOI is closed. This is what it's been sold for. So a perfect practice. Someone paid 1.99 million for that, just shy of 5%. So just call it 5% for something like that. 240 square meters. Yes, it's got a 5-year lease with a 5-year option, good rental increases, but still, that's a lot of money to paying for an office space with a 5-year lease on it. Compare that to the Gyro Clinic, where you've got 340 square meters, 100 square meters more, so you can actually make that big tenancy into 2 smaller ones. Yes, you don't have the same water views as you do the other one, but you do get it on one side, but you're still in the same area, the same building. You got a 10-year lease over a 5-year lease. Yes, rental increases isn't that strong, not at 3.75%. It's at 2% or 2.5%. But the thing is, you know that the property is not going to go inflated over time, right? It's not going to go crazy over time. And if your tenant left, you will not be able to replace that tenant. The rent is very, very reasonable. And I think if you're conservative, it's actually a good buy. For me, if you're buying in metro right now, this is what I consider a trifecta. 6% yield in Melbourne, or close to 6%, so 5.5, 5.7. Sydney, Melbourne property, retail or office shops, office or retail shops, 3, 5, or 7, or if you can get longer leases, that's great. And you know, around that 1.5 mil to 2 mil, or even around the 1 mil mark, that is your trifecta right now. If you can't stomach a close to 6% yielding property with a 10-year lease like the Gyro Clinic on a in Melbourne Metro at 6%, then you shouldn't get into commercial property at all. This is not for you. And you know, whether you're risk averse or not, if you can't take that right now, that is the trifecta. That is the unicorn right now in this market. If you cannot take that, then don't buy commercial property. It's just not right for you, right? You're chasing something that doesn't exist, right? So what I am looking for right now for our client, if they're looking for something in metro, is something that's slightly higher yielding than a Brisbane or regional or fringe Brisbane property. So if Brisbane gets to 6%, done. I'll do that every day of the week. But if it's 5.5, I'd usually try to put them back into Sydney or Brisbane, or like really key areas in Brisbane where I know it's going to grow, not just like anywhere. Definitely not Toowoomba, and definitely not in your regional areas or in Sunshine or somewhere like that. So 5% Melbourne, Sydney is my first go, and you know, anywhere from, you know, sub 1 mil to over $1 million, or 1.5 million, and on a good 3, 5, or 10-year lease, right? That is what I'm seeing right now in the market, as I think is the unicorn, and is a good deal for you buying commercial property, because in the future, people are going to come back to Sydney and Melbourne. It just takes a little time. When that comes back, what's going to happen is you're going to have yield compression. It's going to go to 4% like it was before COVID. All of a sudden, you get capital growth kick in at the back end, refinance, buy again. That's the time you go back into regional, right, at that time. Because right now, regional yields have compressed really heavily, and that's not something if you are buying regional and you're getting the yield, you're getting 6.5, you're getting towards 7, that's good. But a lot of people are paying 6%, a lot of people are paying 5% or 5.5 in regional areas. That's a no-no. That's a no-no. So if you're going to be paying 6, then you might as well pay 5.5 in a metro area and wait for the capital growth to come, right? So that's my 2 cents worth. If you love what I do, you want to be part of the journey, you want me to be part of your journey, You want me to help you build a commercial property portfolio through commercial property cash flow, through growth and uplift strategies. You want someone to partner up with you and really work with you through this and work through your portfolio. Then check me out, helentarrant.com, or click on the link below, go to my website, book in a strategy call, and let's get it going. Let me see how I can strategize and move the pieces around so that you can achieve financial freedom in half the time and get 10 times as much cash flow in one commercial property deal than you would in your residential investments. So again, leave a comment below if you like this video. If you want me to talk about regional next time, leave me a comment, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.